Good morning this time. The travel version of Vlog Thursday is what I'm doing right now because for those you didn't notice, this isn't my studio, but I like to consistently do Vlog Thursday, even if it's not in a studio. I'll probably keep this to around 30, 45 minutes because I do have to get on a flight and head back to Detroit. Currently in Florida at the IT Nation Secure event. Well, that is technically over now, other than people wandering around and uh, getting back to their destinations. I passed a few people in the hallway on their way back, but it was a pretty cool event. There's a lot of fun that was going on. And while we're kind of waiting for this to ramp up, I want to share a photo with you to maybe show a little bit of the fun. These we try to make these events, uh, a good time with a lot of people. So let me present. Let's see, what is it? Share my screen. That's the button I'm looking for. We made a joke of doing tabletop exercises for each person who joined the circle. Each we had to demonstrate what they had to do. We play around a lot because the shenanigans, the horseplay, so to speak, can be a little bit of fun. The rule was, and someone said they wouldn't stand on a table because it wouldn't hold them. So two people got on a table to prove the table could hold two people. Therefore, one person on the table was safe. At least that was the theory. But we actually had a lot of good cybersecurity discussions. The nature of this particular event is to bring together cybersecurity professionals, bring together a lot of talks around that. If you have followed Darknet Diaries, for example, the technical keynote, not the one from the company that puts it on, but the person they had in to do the talk was Grifter. He was the April 2025 episode of Darknet Diaries. Great talk on what it's like to run the security team that manages all of DEF CON and Black Hat and their security operations. So pretty cool stuff. So, and that of course spurs lots of discussion around that. And it just interesting, lots of fun, lots of good cybersecurity talks. I was on several panels speaking on things. I got to meet many of you who follow my channel, so that was actually a lot of fun just in general at this conference. So that was definitely just a great time. Am I streaming from my MacBook Air? Yes, I am. I really want to replace my MacBook Air. If someone wants to email homelab@lawrencesystems.com, I am eventually going to have to get rid of this because it's getting older. It works fine overall, but I want to find something that's just as good. It's a challenge because first, I can't find anything in this price range that is as good. The MacBook Air is cheaper than any alternative that I've been able to find. It has better battery life than alternatives. And even if I'm willing to spend 3 times what this MacBook Air goes for, those problems still persist. So I was looking at them. There's a couple people that had I can't remember the name of them. They're the tinier little PCs that are kind of leaning towards gaming. Those are pretty cool. And maybe I can look at that. I want something that's about the same size. I have the smaller, is this maybe a 12-inch MacBook Air? I think the bigger ones are 13 or 15. This is the Gen 1 MacBook Air. But I completely, it's just hard. I don't want to use a Mac. It's just, I don't know what would work. Like I cannot charge this for days while I travel and it just keeps working and the quality is good. And the keyboard, the important part, I type a lot. I don't want a keyboard that sucks. And that's the problem with some of those little ones is that the LG Gram did look interesting. That one is pretty small. So let me pull it up. Probably someone's got, see, I know they've got a recent model of it. So let me, I guess I got to view it at the LG site. Man, too many ad clicks. Oh, later. I guess I should start at their website. I don't need to know my location. Man, I hate you go to websites. It's like, hold on, let me click through 10 stupid things here. So there's the LG Gram 17. Oh, $799. That's not bad. That's cheaper than I thought. I don't need much power with it. That's the whole thing. I just need to know if it runs Linux because I am not running Windows. So not bad. Not bad. If anyone knows if it's a good Linux laptop, let me know. Yeah, the M series, it really is. It's kind of crazy how this laptop's what, 4 or 5 years old now. I'm doing a live stream on it, no problem. I do all of my work related things on it, which is mostly punching away at Slack and messaging people and sending a ton of email. That's why I email people a lot. So that's one of the reasons I need it to have a good keyboard. But that's the challenge is to me, this is not where I'm running Linux. This is how I SSH into things that do run Linux. This is like a Chromebook. I could probably get away with a Chromebook, and that may be the alternative I have to look at because at least I know a Chromebook, I can always reflash it to run native Linux because generally you can do that with not all, but a lot of the Chromebooks. But yeah, I see Willie said the same thing. You also have an M1 MacBook. It's just, you want to hate it, but you can't beat it. You're like, what else has a 12-hour battery life? I wander around the conference all day. If I want to take notes, I just open it up. I take all the notes and reply and message people. And then the battery's at like 80% at the end of the day. Like, that's crazy. I know it's because they're using ARM, and there are some other ARM laptops, but they're just not. They're very much like hobbyist projects that are kind of a product. So yeah, it's challenging. So you're using a MacBook Pro, but I'm using the MacBook Air, and it just works too well. Hence the reason I will probably keep this. My wife has the new M3 Air. That's what she uses, and she loves it. She's got the 15-inch one, and I got to admit, looking at it and using it, I'm like, yeah, it's absolutely, yeah. I don't have a solution. That's all I know. I can't solve that problem right now. I will just suffer through it because I don't love the Mac. But then again, all I have to do is I SSH into any of my servers, and I can get the thing I want done. So it's not like I'm really running. This is like a terminal that lets me access my Linux things. So I'm fine with that. And I guess if I went with one of my friends did switch to the MacBook Pro, and that way he runs a series of virtual machines on it. He's got one with all the memory in it, so he runs a series of virtual machines so he can isolate everything. Yeah. Yeah. Take a year off and make a home lab operating system. Yeah. I'm considering buying an M4 MacBook Air, mostly because I have an Apple card, so I wouldn't have to pay for it all at once. Just like what Apple charges for storage and RAM upgrades. Yeah, they are really expensive on that. But I don't run, like I said, I'm not really even running anything locally on it, so it's not even an issue for running things locally. It's just, to me, it's a terminal. I just need my communications applications running all the time. That's really what this is for. And I could even extend it and say StreamYard is part of the communications applications, and that's why we need to run it here. But other talks that were interesting, we did some talks about community, and I think there's too many people, and I don't know, they want to argue about maybe what the community is and maybe think too hard about defining it. But there's certainly some thoughts around it of why a community goes good or why one goes bad. Recently, someone was kicked out of, if any of you might be familiar with it, it's called Tech Tribe. Tech Tribe is an online community for managed service providers, but the Tech Tribe started dying, and a lot of it came down to poor moderation. They finally threw the person who just basically sat on the edge of the rules constantly and was just not a pleasant person. And that person finally got thrown out. But I don't know that it's too late. There's still an active community in Tech Tribe, but you watch these communities die when they're poorly moderated. It's not just that people were going, well, you have to define what community is, who you keep in, who you throw out, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no. The value any community forum place has is the moderation. You're not just letting anyone in or letting anyone say what they want. That's always it. It's not the people, so to say, it is how it is managed. But this was a lot of the discussion because we have some cybersecurity communities. We have one on Signal we started, and I think maybe too many people got in and decided it was about politics, which of course that's not the purpose of it. You need to have a clearly set of defined rules of what this is for. If not, it gets filled with noise. And then if it's your noise to signal ratio is not good enough, then it's no longer a useful community for you to participate in. This is where the cybersecurity stuff was about, where we want actionable intelligence on this, but at the same time, we want it not to be filled with garbage. And I helped out a little bit because since I was part of the talk, and I'm going to give you guys the short URL here, I made a list of all the places Tom gets the news. More specifically than news, though. So I've already shared out my RSS. Matter of fact, my RSS feed is now available on GitHub, but this is a post you can find in my forums. And I have a large qualifier because there are really important factors in my head that maybe you care about. If not, scroll down, that kind of explain why I do what I do and why these people are or are not on a list. And so first are the how I came up with these lists or how I maintain them as well. As I even said, challenge my ideas on here if some of them are wrong. Then we go down to like, here's my fresh RSS feed. There's my OPML file for anyone that wants it. Then there's a list of other places I follow. Now, this is not 100% of everything I follow, but it is a pretty good starting point. And I kept this narrower and focused to cybersecurity. And this is just how you keep up with the news or how you keep up with the goings on or how I have deeper learning. I also communicate with some of these people, and that is a piece of it as well. Sometimes they are interesting to have a conversation with around, and like I said, the focus of this is much more cybersecurity tech news. And I think that's where a lot of the starting point is. Now, I can't link to, because they're not public, all the groups I belong to, but those are also some of the smaller Signal chat groups that I belong to. Are pretty good. Some of the bigger ones are not bad. There's at least one of them that has so far has maintained a reasonable amount of good information there without getting flooded, but I can't share that publicly because we're trying to keep it narrow and focused to the cybersecurity professionals we know. And now how that feed translate externally, yeah, that's a little bit different, but I like to be extremely transparent with how I do it, how I curate it. And especially, and this was kind of the joke when I was sharing this and talking to people about it, was the whole write-up inside of here. And there's a reason for it, and that's because no one should be surprised that the cybersecurity community, well known for hacking and social engineering, is also spending an inordinate amount of time hacking and social engineering people to tell you, buy my course and I'll get you a job. Just give me X dollars and I'll guarantee you'll make so much money in the market. Now, some of those people are legit and they genuinely want to help. Other people are grifters who just come into the community to do just that. Yeah. A read-only feed of these groups. That is an interesting thought I've had. The problem, and this is where things get really nuanced, and then we had a really good conversation about this up on the stage with some people. Well, you can have it later, but in the real time, and where does the meme I sent? Let me pull up the meme. This was a discussion I was making a joke about, but this is a real problem. And where is the too many things open? Oh, that's right. I didn't share. Let me pull it up elsewhere. Hold on. Save. If anyone's wondering what I'm doing, it's like I'm clunky on a Mac. That's the best way I could describe what is occurring right now. Why doesn't this drag and drop? There we go. All right. The question was, and this is where it gets funny, what's the difference between an MSP or managed service provider or an APT with an LLC? This was my, joke comment up there. But this is where, when we're talking about something somewhat real time of an event, how do we know we're not also feeding the bad actors who are watching for that event and looking at what we're doing? There is a kind of nuance to it. We know that the threat actors are watching as much as they can because they want to know if they're discovered, if you figured out how they're doing. And oh man, this was a absolutely talked about a lot. We One of the questions that was thrown out that they wouldn't answer up on the stage at the one of the big event parts, but it was like, if you could destroy a percentage of the MSP market, Thanos style, one click and they go away, what percentage of it would it be? And there was a lot of numbers tossed around. We kind of came in our group chat to the conclusion that maybe 70% of MSPs are terrible. So it's hard. It's not an easy answer. There's a lot of them that don't know what they're doing. This is the perfect, segue into something that was said at one of the talks my friend Cody gave, where we were talking about emerging threats and what they look like. And I may borrow him to see if he's got time to do a video with me on those emerging threats. I thought it was a great talk. And there was still someone at the end of the talk. They owned an MSP. I'm not going to name them. And these are why those groups, because this person at least had it was a smaller group of about 25 or 30 people in the room, and they still asked this question. They're like, so you said RDP is bad. Uh-huh. And we shouldn't have RDP open. Uh-huh. And then they're like, what about RDS web? Don't open that. But I heard someone say, and I think Cody immediately cut him off. He goes, hit that person with a stick. It was just like, that was the answer. Hit them with a stick. No, you do not expose these things to the internet. You put them behind a VPN. Well, can't VPNs be hacked too? And he's like, just put the RDP things and the RDS web things all behind a VPN. Quit exposing them to the internet. This person couldn't grasp that. And they were an owner of a company, managed service provider. And you're just like, it's 2025. We're still arguing about this. Oh, you laugh at the memes that go on the Discord and stuff. Yeah. But yeah, there's just a real challenge. I may just either I just get his slide deck or talk about it. Maybe I need to have him on as another voice because people don't seem to believe me. I'm watching literally a consulting job, and if they're watching, I'm going to be telling them this when we do the consulting. They're overly concerned about device authentication on the network, and I'm like, that's cool, but that's not really where the problem is. Like, they're going to spend more time doing that type of work, adding complexity to their network, when the real threat is still how people access and achieve identity. Matter of fact, that is where all the attacks are ramping up. This was the theme of numerous talks of everything's become so identity centric. That's where the edge is now. It's not that identity. I don't know if I like the term, it's the new edge. It is currently the edge of the attacks. It's not that we're saying you don't need a firewall. That's still an edge device that's important. But people trying to steal your identity in terms of like your logins, your session tokens, that is where all the attacks are highly focused right now. So cool. You want to do and spend a lot of time re-engineering a rather small network to have device level 8021 authentication. And I'm like, cool. You want a whole NAC solution for your small offices that have about 30 people in them. It seems like a heavy lift. Have you considered spending money on these other things that would probably be more effective at your security? Because, I mean, do you have at this small office that many people plugging things in? They sent me a question list like to kick off before the consulting, but I'm just like, people who want to deploy NAC solutions. I mean, I get it. I'm not saying there's anything bad with it, but if you were trying to pick a priority order of things, they also had asked about doing host isolation at the firewall level. And I'm like, no, That's not, yeah, that doesn't help. And exactly like Willie, Nat can't beat a bad click or an email. And that a bad click in an email is what all the attacks are now. I mean, you have a NAC solution, it's because you're worried about the physical things that are coming onto your network. How much of a threat is that? I mean, maybe I don't understand something about the nature of their business. I mean, I know what kind of business it is, and I just don't see this as a problem at their business. But maybe I don't understand it because it's just a normal small business with a small amount of devices at each location. I just don't know why they want an axe solution. I have a feeling, and sometimes that's what it is. It's just old school thinking. Oh, that's how we're going to protect the network. Or they get really worried, like, oh, they want per port firewall rules. Okay, I mean, sure, we'll prevent east-west between devices. We can do that, but is that where the threat model is? I mean, you don't want any devices talking to each other. Except for a prescribed list. Okay, that works. But they don't usually go east-west anymore because most computers have the default settings, and Windows Firewall, which has been around for a very long time now, works pretty good. So it's not a terrible thing. I mean, there's always going to be some flaw somewhere if some ports open, but yeah, I just wouldn't put my efforts there because budgets and time are very finite. So you have to find what is the most effective way to do it. Host isolation via the firewall, not really, but uh, having high levels of protection, having tools that dive into the browser that really understand what links can or can't be clicked, that type of web filtering goes way further for blocking threats. You know, we use tooling that blocks things on the endpoints. Just using Quad 9 will solve you a ton of problems if you just throw that in for your DNS in some of those basic ways. Yeah. Because even from the threat actor standpoint, it's um, they don't have time to they're in non-extradition countries, which means physically coming here, not worth it unless it's a really big entity. The best is when people spend a lot of money on EDR, but let users have local administrator. Yeah, local admin's probably a bigger problem as well. Yeah, it's all designed in layers, and some layers are weaker than others. We've been deploying just in where only certain apps can run as local admin. Users themselves are not local admins. Yeah, I mean, there's service accounts and things like that. There's some of the other granular controls that you need to do, but a lot of our talks were leaned into making sure you got the defaults changed in Microsoft. This was an argument I had on LinkedIn with some people of just how terrible the Microsoft defaults are. I don't know. They just don't care about setting good secure defaults. So you got to look at, like, how are you going to secure these? My friend Kelvin did a talk. It was like a 2-hour work. It was only a workshop here, but it was called "Don't Accept the Defaults" because the defaults are bad. So it was a good 2-hour workshop of these are all the things you need to set. These are all the settings that need to be tweaked. Blah 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 blah. Just all the things that Microsoft does poorly that you can do better with a few tweaks and changes. And those are probably far more effective than a NAC solution at solving the security problem. And that'll probably be how the conversation goes. I don't know. They may have their mind set that they need all of these features, and that's fine. It's just you're going to spend a lot of money on all this setup at these offices for these. Yeah. um, there's some companies out there. So CIPP is what Kelvin's project is. I'll share it out. This is open source, by the way, and it'll help you with a lot of these things. There, it's in the link. So, yeah, check that out. There's a lot it can do. I am the least knowledgeable on a lot of Microsoft stuff, but it's a tool for managing the partner portals. But I am not at all an expert. Kelvin, my friend, is absolutely an expert on these things. And we do use these tools at CNWR, but I'm actually not, I know that you need to change the defaults. I'm not the person to ask what those defaults are, other than when I look at them, I know they're insecure. And that's why we spend a lot of time tuning them to make them more secure. Which are those settings? I don't know. That's not me. Maybe one day I'll bring someone on there, but there's actually another channel called, I think, Cloud Capsule, and I know the guy that runs the channel, but there's a channel dedicated to just Microsoft Office 365 / Azure settings. UniFi question: you manage your client's network, everything, and is on your controller, replacing their router. Do you add UXG? We have been doing more of the ones with the built-in controllers, the cloud gateways as they call them. We just tie them to the dashboard. The dashboard now has a ability to set up all your technicians in it, so you can have a master account, join them, and then have controls for it. So I don't think there's any problem with that. The ones that we still have in our controller are people who are not using the UniFi firewalls. So we don't bother installing a cloud gateway on site for them. That's because that would be not the ideal way. But the cloud gateways are so solid now, they've become really good. I would say that's probably the way to go, is just, buy one of the cloud gateways and leave the controller there. Let me see if we're talking about the same person. So then oh yeah, John Underwood's is good too. I know who you're talking about. He's one of them. This guy here, I know him. He covers, I'll throw a link in here for people to make it easy to find. Then the other guy runs Cloud Capsule, and where is his name? T minus 365. I just know his other company, Nick Ross. That's the other guy. He's another good one to follow. Both these people cover a lot of that. Yeah, I see other people saying it. Yep. T minus 365 is his channel. But these are two channels if you're doing a lot in the Microsoft 365 ecosystem that you can learn quite a bit. I don't do any of that. Like my company does, but I don't. So it's completely something I don't put any effort into it. Because I don't have a need to. I'm never planning on being an Office 365 consultant. I have a team of people that do it, and there's plenty of other YouTube channels covering it. Because I get every now and then people like, "Hey Tom, why aren't you covering Azure?" I'm like, I'm kind of the anti Azure, AWS, mega scalar, hyperscaler hosting person. I'm usually talking about what you can do on your own, and that's all my consulting. So I stay with my expertise in there. Of course, you can just outsource this to Office and things like that if you want. This is not where my head's at. So yeah, one of those, not my wheelhouse, but I keep tabs, so to speak, on the global general goings on with those things. And I let the people, this is where tech is really going. We all have to have expertise very specifically in certain areas, and it's hard to specialize. You can generalize in a lot of areas, but yeah, the specialization. Yeah, and this is right. Oh yeah, this is so true. Cloud repatriation is becoming huge. That's where my head's at, because that's the consulting we're doing. We're working with a company now managing, well, we're helping them work out the details of how we're going to do all the things they need done, but it's helping them manage 6 petabytes of data. and growing. And they're not doing this in the cloud because that's unreasonable. Um, I have a friend right now, and we're going to work on some videos over the next couple of weeks with them. They move almost 400 terabytes a month in their kind of mini data center, moving 400 terabytes a month and having all the storage and everything on there every single month. Doing that in a hyperscaler is completely possible, of course, but it's not. He could not have his service at the pricing he has it at if he actually tried to run this with a normal, AWS account. It would, once you start talking about, all right, we need 600 or 700 terabytes of storage, or let's just say a petabyte of storage, and on top of that, we're going to have to move between 350 and 400 terabytes a month of data. You're like, oh, that's a big service that's going to cost, we should do some cost calculating for egress fees and data fees and see what that would cost. Not to mention even all the compute and GPUs he uses to make the service work. And you're like, yeah, that's not reasonable to run in a that type of environment. But I think people don't realize how much easier it's not just home lab. Home lab kind of scales up pretty easily. You're using the same tools. I use XCP-ng for my home lab, but we're also using XCP-ng on a cross data center project right now. 2 separate data centers with a dedicated 10 gig pipe between them. And away you go. Oh, I definitely have zero interest in Office 365 in terms of Microsoft's a company that's not built by making good products. They're a company built by regulatory capture. Once you understand that and get that as a perspective, going, oh, yeah, you're right. Their products aren't that great, but they sue anyone who tries to compete with them. And they have more lawyers than the Department of Justice. Therefore, they kind of get their way. That's how Microsoft was built. Microsoft did, though, in other news, lose the battle in the EU. And now only if you're in the EU, you can remove the Microsoft Store from your Windows thing. I mean, Windows has become so terrible, but that's because there's no competitors. Of course, they're going to do something egregious and bad. What's stopping them? What are you going to do? Get everyone in the business world to stop using QuickBooks? What?
Nothing. I'm just looking.
What are you looking at? Oh, you're sending messages?
No.
Oh. I don't know. You're being weird and staring at the screen.
I'm seeing how far over it shows, so I know where to set.
Oh, well, you're in the background.
Well, that's what I was trying not to be.
Yep. They also just got rid of, now they're not wrong that the program was being abused. They just chose not to put any effort into fixing the abuse problem. They just canceled it for nonprofits because, a $1 trillion company can't be bothered with, helping charities. Why would we do that? What is the incentive for us to do that? Was someone going to not use us because we're not a charitable organization? Yeah, Windows is turning into a walking sandwich board for advertising and search tracking. Yeah, it's just they just cram more and more crap in there. Yeah, we're gonna see slowly. Mostly in the EU, we're already seeing it. They're gonna start moving away from some of the Microsoft products. They are gonna lead the charge on it. It is Microsoft's a burden on US small business. They're not a help. They're overpriced. They're always increasing the prices again, and they're not easy to manage. You can't just get Office 365. You got to buy Office 365 and then hire someone to get it working properly. It's a mess. I think it would be simpler. You wouldn't necessarily have to set your home country to the EU, but someone will just reverse engineer what needs to be set or how it needs to be set to make that work. It's my guess. I don't think it's going to be too hard for people to kind of reverse engineer how that will work. So someone will just make a script that follows the process that the EU does of here's how you get it removed. But then again, at some point, I mean, I guess if you need to use Windows, you need to use Windows. That people ask why we don't try and switch our clients to Linux. I'm like, their line of business applications have to use it. So I can't talk all of our customers into switching their line of business applications. That's not necessarily an easy conversation. I mean, I've had customers, so I don't think we have any right now active that were like actively under management, but I've known people who set up completely running on like a Chromebook, and they were thrilled when they got to Chromebooks. All their applications are web applications. They set up Chromebook management and just said, "Cool, we give everybody a Chromebook. Everything lives in the browser. That's it. That's all we need." Yeah, Chris Titus has that Windows cleanup script that's pretty popular. I've never used it as I don't run Windows, but yes, maybe he'll add the EU stuff in there as well. Not sure the answer on that. But I'm gonna get going because I have to get on a plane shortly and get back to Detroit. Oh yeah, well, finding a good point of sale system for anything but Windows. I think a lot of it. I know it's more restaurant niche, but I've seen it outside the restaurant business. There's a lot of the restaurants that have all just switched to tablets with an app that runs like in a kiosk mode. That seems to be the going solution that every restaurant has gone with, and I don't think it's a terrible idea. They don't have to worry about anything. It's in kiosk mode. It's a single dedicated device. They usually have integrated a credit card reader in with it. It's simple. I'm guessing a lot of them are probably all Android based. I don't. They're sold as kind of a kit, but they look nice, and they put them on a little pivot thing so they can punch it in. They spin it around. Here, sir, please. Tap your card here, and I think that's pretty easy. Does Detroit still have Lion's Choice? I don't know what that is. Yeah, a lot of iPads. Some are iPads, some are like custom boxes, which I assume run Android. I've never really. I'm not going to spend time poking and breaking them, but I'm sure I can look it up. And someone has taken one apart and figured out, how to get it out of kiosk mode, which is always the first thing we like to poke at. But I'm not poking at some restaurant. I'm not here to make them have a bad day. I just want my food. But I'll end this here. So thanks everyone for joining. I'm going to go pack and get ready and jump out of here. What time is it? Oh yeah, it's about time to go. So later, everyone. Take care. See you online and all that fun stuff.